Hello and welcome to another episode of Develop with WP, a show where I try to teach other developers more about WordPress. In today's show, we're going to be doing the third and final portion of our term meta series. And in this video, we're actually going to look at how we would render out this information that we now have saved into the database on the front end. So let's get started. So what we're going to do here is if I click here and we look at this New York taxonomy right now, you'll see that it just has the title and we have one post. It's just a test post that's showing up here. But what we want to do is we want to be able to highlight each location's social network because that's what we've built so far. So in order to do that, we're going to need some social icons. So what I've done, just real quickly, is I have enqueued a style right here, and all I've done is simply given it the handle of font awesome because I'm using the font awesome icons, which you can find here. All right, and I've simply given it a CDN URL to pull in these icons just as a temporary thing for this series. Obviously, if you were doing this for production or something, you'd actually want to download these files and have them in your actual theme files or plugin files, whatever it is. So that's going to give us the ability to have these icons. The next thing I want to do is show you this file that outputs this page. So we could have just relied on the standard archive.php, but I've went ahead and created a custom archive page for our locations. And the way you create a custom archive page is you simply create a new PHP file and you name it whatever you name it taxonomy dash whatever your location or your taxonomy slug is. In my case, it's location. So it's taxonomy dash location. And quite honestly, all the code that you see here, I literally just copied from the actual archive page right here. I didn't actually change anything. I simply only wanted these social icons to show up on my custom taxonomy. I didn't want them to show up on every archive, and I didn't want to pollute this with conditionals and all kinds of stuff like that. So I simply just copied it and made a new version. So as we speak right this minute, my copied version or my custom taxonomy file has the exact same things as archive.php, but we're going to change it up. So what we're going to be doing is right here below the location header area, we're going to display our social icons. And if we look in the code, we'll see that that's happening right here because we're getting the title and then a description if there was a description. So right underneath of that is where we're going to start our code. Now to start, we're going to simply put the code right here. But once we get a working version, I'm going to actually refactor this and do it kind of how I normally would do it. I normally wouldn't do what we're about to do where we just put a whole bunch of logic right here in the theme file. But we'll cover that later. So first, let's just make this thing work. So the first thing we need to do is we need to be able to query the database for any term meta for this specific term, location term of New York. So we need to get some term information. If we were to use xdebug and pause execution on this, right, just the way it is, we would see a few things. Let's see. Here we go. So we would see that the taxonomy is location, and we would see the term is New York, and that's great. And we probably could work with this, but really what we need is we need to be able to call a function called getTermMeta, which we used on our edit screen back here, right here. But you'll notice that we need the term ID. And if we look at the information that we have available to us right now, we don't have the term meta or term ID. We just have the slug and the taxonomy that we're in. So we're going to have to work around that. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a variable called term, and we're actually going to go and get the whole term object with everything. And we're going to do that using a function called getTermBy. And getTermBy first takes, it wants to know what we're going to give it. We're going to give it the slug, And we know that the slug exists because, again, if we refresh this, oops, let me comment this out really quick. We know that it exists because it's in this term variable right here. So we're able to say we're going to give you the slug, and the slug is going to be this term. And then the next thing we're going to set is which taxonomy are we searching in, categories, tags, what have you. Well, we're searching in our custom one, which is location. All right. The other thing we're going to do is we're going to pull in our social networks, so our array of social networks. And if you remember, we have that over here in our plugin called Supported Social Networks. So we can call that function. And you'll see that my editor is kind of throwing a fit here, and that's because, again, I'm using a namespace. So in order for it to really reference this, I have to give it a namespace. I think as much as I've been using namespaces, I probably should do a series on it. But suffice it to say that we're really just calling this function to get our social networks. All right, so let's put a test equals 0 here, and let's stop our execution again down here and see what we got. All right, so now if we go and look at term, you'll see that it's an actual object, and it has the term ID, which is exactly what we need. And you'll also see our social networks, which is right here. So now we're going to loop through this information and do something. And what we're going to do is we're going to get the term key. So this is something that we've done before as well. Right here, we got the term key, and then we did our term meta. So we're going to do the same thing over here now. And honestly, as you can tell, there's a lot of repetition here. So there's a lot of room for refactoring of our code base even as we stand, because a lot of things we're doing over and over, we probably could refactor to be more streamlined. But for this series, I'm just going to keep it the way it is. So what we're doing here is we're building out our term key, which is, again, a concatenation of location and then whatever this network variable is. And so each time we loop through each social network, so the first time through, this will be location underscore Facebook underscore metadata. And then we'll go get the term meta for Facebook, and it'll be stored in this variable using the term ID, which we now have, like I showed you, because we did this whole get term by function up here. So now we have everything we need. At this moment in time, we literally have the information about the URL we stored for Facebook the first time through. So let's check to see if we have anything. What we want to do is we want to check to see if there is a value in this Facebook or whichever social network we're in as the loop goes. We want to see whether or not there's any information, and if there is, we want to display that information. If not, we don't want to display it. So we'll go if not empty metadata. So if this did return us something, then we want to output something. And what we're going to do actually is we're going to create a variable up here equal to an empty string. And this is just kind of like the start of our output. And I'll explain that more in a minute. So down here we'll go output dot equals. So dot equals is like a concatenating string. So it's going to take whatever output is and then add to it this next part we're going to do. And the next part we're going to do is it's going to be sprint f. Oh, come on. And we're going to give it some HTML. it's going to be span. And then inside of the span tag, we're going to have an A element. Oops. So an anchor tag. I'm going to put a pound sign in it for just a second. And then inside of this, we're going to have an icon element. And the icon element is going to have a class equal to FA. So this is using Font Awesome. And so if you've never used Font Awesome, you could definitely look it up. But this is how it works. It goes FA dash whatever icon you want. And it just so happens that if we look at the Font Awesome icons, for example, we wanted to show Twitter, it's FA-Twitter. And we already have this lowercase Twitter stored as the network value right here. So we're just going to do a placeholder, %s. And then I'm also going to go ahead and replace this right here with a placeholder. All right. So now what we want to do is we're going to replace these two placeholders in our sprintf. And this first placeholder is going to be the URL. And the URL is simply whatever's in metadata. So we'll go escape URL metadata. And then the next variable is just going to be network. So we'll do escape attribute network. Span A. Just looking at this really quick to make sure it looks right. There is one more thing I'm going to add to our anchor tag right here. I'm going to give it a target attribute. And I'm going to equal to _ blank. And that'll just make sure that this opens up in a new window whenever someone clicks on it. And then at the end down here, we'll simply echo out the output. So the way this output is going to work is it's essentially going to start off as an empty string. And the first time it'll go through and it'll check to see if there's a Facebook URL. And if there is, it's going to create this whole span tag, anchor tag, and it's going to, as a string, and it's going to concatenate it to output. So the first time through, output will be nothing. And then as it loops through the first time, it'll become this string. And then it'll come through and it'll look for Twitter. And if it has URLs for each social network, it'll just keep adding this same string onto it till at the end, output will equal a whole bunch of stuff. And actually, I don't know why I'm talking about this when I could just show you. So if we go over here and refresh, and we look at output, where are you, output? Oh, wait a minute, we haven't got there yet. Let me redo this. I had another breakpoint there, so it stopped before we got to output. All right. All right, so here's output. And if we look at it, you can see that it's a whole bunch of these, right? So there's the first target, span, and then the next span, and so forth and so on. So you can see that we have a whole bunch of spans. This is just one real long string. All right, so let me stop that, and let's go over here and let's refresh it. There you go. So now you can see that our social icons have popped up. And if we were to just real quickly for just instructional purposes, go in here and target a span. Let me give my spans a class too, and that'll make things better. So I'll go class equals location social icons. Refresh this. All right, and now if I target one of these and I give it some margin right of 10 pixels, you'll see that it looks really nice. I did that again. Yeah, so you'll see it looks really nice, and if we click on one, it'll open up and take us, to whatever the URL is. Remember, I put ESPN for everything. The other thing I want to show you too, though, is that if we go in here to location and we go to New York and we get rid of, say, Facebook, and we update it, and we go over here and we refresh, you'll see that Facebook disappears. So that's really what's neat too, is that each one of these locations will only show icons if it has a URL. So it's quite possible that each one could have different social networks and whatnot, just based on what the user inputs. So that's really cool. All right, so at this point we have a fully functioning, working solution here. But like I told you before, I really would not do this like this. And the reason I wouldn't is because this is a theme template, and here we've just added some social button stuff, and it's taking up a lot of space. And you could really see a situation where not too far down the road, we add another thing like this and another thing. And before you know it, this whole template is just a mess, and it's completely hard to read. So we're going to refactor this really quick to show you how I would do this. So one of the things I like to do when working with templates that have a lot of logic, like this one, is I will create a new folder in my theme, and I'll call it Views. And then inside of here, I'll create a file, and I'll call it location-view. And then inside of here, I'll create a function. So I'll go function, render, location, social icons. And I know I'm going to need the term. And then what I'm going to do, so I know I need the term because I'm going to need it right here. And I'm going to pull all of this out of here and put it in this function. Okay? And I need this term to get passed to me from the template file. And then down here, the only other thing I'm going to change is I'm going to make this a return statement. And then I'm going to go to functions.php. And just, it doesn't really matter where, but I'm just going to copy this one. And we're going to require in this view file that I just made. So it's in views, and it's called location view.php. All right, and then I'm simply going to take this and put it in place of where we took everything out at. I'm just going to echo out that. And I don't know if it's called term. Let's see if it works. Make sure I saved everything. And it still works, so that's perfect. So this is what I would do, and it's a lot cleaner. So now our template isn't polluted with a ton of logic. The logic's been pulled out into something else, and we've named it a function that I think personally is very descriptive. So it's render location social icons. It's pretty obvious what this function does. It checks to see if there are any social icons for this location, and if so, it renders out their HTML form. But it's out of the way, and it's in a different spot. And generally what happens for me is, you'll have a couple of these spots within this template where you'll be doing stuff like that, and I'll just keep adding functions to this view location page, and I'll make a new one for every template. So this one's location-view.php. If I were to do a single, I could do a single-view, and so forth and so on. All right, so that's it for this series. It's 3 videos total. I hope you found them, as always, informative and enjoyable, and that you learned something. If you have any questions, be sure to put them in the comments. I'm also interested to know what other people would like to learn. So leave me some comments. Let me know what you'd like to learn, and maybe that'll be in the next upcoming videos. So again, thanks for watching. Be sure to share, like, link, subscribe, tweet, all that good stuff. And I'll see you in the next video. Crank it up.